An attitude is a daily choice. Every single day, things affect our attitude. When we think about an attitude, what is an attitude? It's really one's ability to overcome change and challenge, or potentially not to overcome change and challenge. Now, during this course, you're going to learn why negative attitudes even form, what helps change negative attitudes, the power of questions, facilitating change through activities. Your ability to coach a negative attitude into a positive one has far-reaching benefits. Hi, I'm Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and we've been teaching managers how to coach for over 20 years. And during this course, you're going to learn a variety of strategies specific to coaching positive attitudes as well as coaching negative attitudes into positive attitudes. Now, you notice I just started off with coaching positive attitudes. One of the things that we do as leadership all too often is we literally address attitudes only when they're negative. So, for example, when someone's positive, how often do we call them into our office and praise them? It's usually pretty rare, right? And the reason it's rare is it's not something we have to fix or correct. So often our association with attitude is about negative attitudes, when in fact we have to praise positive behaviors and positive attitudes so people know what to gravitate to. So when we're coaching attitudes, especially in a one-on-one basis, you're looking at two different processes. On the left side is the process of change. When we coach a negative attitude into a positive attitude, we have to realize one fundamental thing. We have to first initially build awareness. Now, at the awareness conversation, it is not the objective of convincing someone they have a negative attitude. It's just not going to be that easy. They have a negative attitude for a reason. They've been practicing it for quite some time. So number one, the goal is to simply build awareness. The second stage is really the effort stage. You're looking for their willingness specific to their effort to improve their attitude. Number three, progress. Are they progressing? Are they having sustainable change during periods of time? And last, results. We're looking for predictable, sustainable behavior specific in this course to attitude. Now remember, when we build awareness, we're just building awareness. Effort, we're looking for their effort, their willingness to turn things in the right direction. And three, progress. If they're progressing, we have to recognize it, reward it, acknowledge it. Then and only then can we have predictable, sustainable results. Now on the right side, you're looking at a four-step coaching conversation process, and I'm going to allude to this in a real-world example here in a few minutes. So if we're coaching someone who's struggling with their attitude, a learning project can be used after the first conversation. So for example, Tom, next week I want you to come in with one interaction where you really felt like you demonstrated a positive interaction to one of your teammates, and maybe one looking back you wish you would kind of alter the way you would have approached one of your teammates, and why. The learning project frames out our conversation. The learning project bestows upon its rightful owner accountability and ownership. The only person who can own this change or this adoption of positive attitude is the person you're coaching. Now, you can be a participant, you can share in the process, but you cannot own what they choose not to own. Number two, a discussion phase will ensue where you ask questions. So how did it go? What would you do differently? What did you learn about yourself? And we're going to teach you 3 questioning models here in a few slides specific to coaching attitudes. Third step, activity. This is where we facilitate action. So let's go back to our learning project. Let's say our employee comes in and they illustrate a positive interaction and maybe one that wasn't so positive. You can literally act out that conversation and say to your employee, well, Tom, why don't we act out that conversation Let me play your role, then we can switch, and let's see how to make that conversation better. Change does not occur by employees initiating that on their own. Rarely will you have an employee come into your office and say, boss, I need to change. I need some uncomfortable actions, or I need some uncomfortable simulations. They're not going to do that. And last, learning project. At the end of every coaching session, you have to bestow ownership on its rightful owner, the person you're coaching. So as we review both sides of this equation, on the left side, you're looking for stages of change. On the right side, that's going to be the conversation model that we teach you throughout this course. Now, there are 5 key words we encourage everybody to adopt when coaching. First of all, the word we. Somebody will be more willing to change if somebody comes along for the ride. That does not mean you own it, but it positions that person to be a much more willing participant. Share. The word share is a friendly way to disseminate information. Opportunity. It's the WIFT. What's in it for them? Observation and perspective are neutral. It erodes that emotional interpretation. Let me give you an example of a bad way to start off a conversation. So Chris, one of the things I wanted to share with you is I'm really frustrated with your attitude. I'm going to stop there. I mean I'm feeling a certain way. The word frustrated is emotional. I'm frustrated with you. I'm almost attacking. Now remember, we're coaching people to adopt positive attitudes. If we exhibit a negative connotation or a negative perspective, how is that going to facilitate a positive reaction? Now let me use these 5 words and share with you a great way to start a conversation. Chris, I wanted to chat with you as I think we have a wonderful opportunity to really garner greater teamwork between yourself and your teammates. And I wanted to share some information with you with your permission. Would that be okay? Now remember, the goal isn't to get them in a headlock or to attack them. The goal is to build awareness. The goal is to ignite a willingness to produce effort so they move in the direction of a positive attitude. Let's review. When we use the word we, we're in it together. When we use the word share, it's a friendly way to disseminate information or perspective. The word opportunity is a positive word to move in the right direction. The words observation and perspective are neutral, and they position you to not be viewed as attacking or using emotional interpretation. Now, as we go forward, there are 2 great strategies, and I actually just used them in the example I provided you. First, permission. Do you mind if I share with you? When we get people's permission, it doesn't mean they love our feedback or they love the perspective that we think they can be negative at times. But what we do is we get them thinking about receiving the information. We get their permission, meaning they can be less defensive. Doesn't mean they love the feedback, but they become less defensive. And the sword is where you own why you're asking the question. So let's go back to our first example. Tom, I wanted to sit down with you and share with you a couple opportunities where I think, you might enjoy working with your teammates more, and I'm wondering if we could do that together. And I'd love your permission to give you some perspective and opportunities of where I think things could improve, because the last thing I want to do is assume where you're coming from. Notice how I just finished. The last thing I want to do is assume, because that might be unfair to you. That's the sword. I'm throwing myself on the sword so I don't make assumptions. So if you combine permission-based question plus the sword with our 5 key words, people will become much more receptive. Now, using these 5 key words and these 2 strategies will certainly take some time and practice. So what do we know about employees? Every single day, they have challenges. Getting kids off to school, picking them up after work, things during the day, teammates they don't get along with. The boss has called them into the office. So we know from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. there are things going on. We also know at noon people typically do what? They go have lunch and they got to relax. Guess what happens at about 2 o'clock? They become a little sluggish because the food settles. And then after 5 o'clock, a whole second day starts, especially for people who have families. So we know on an average day, people have a lot of stuff going on. So an attitude is one's ability to absorb these changes and these challenges during the course of the day positively. So let me ask you, if you had to describe a word or a series of words to describe your team from an attitude perspective, what are the first set of adjectives you would use and why? How would you characterize their ability to overcome change and challenge? Have you ever made a list of people who are your positive attitude people and maybe the people who have opportunities to improve as it relates to their attitudes? So again, the challenge you will have is facilitating a positive attitude or fixing it. I'll let you in on a secret. Never has anyone adopted a positive attitude by being called into the boss's office and having the boss raise his or her voice and say, you got to cut it out, you got to have a better attitude, and we mandate a positive attitude. If we're that easy, we'd all be doing it. So our relationship with attitude as leaders, as coaches, as thoughtful leaders and coaches, has to be one of a positive nature. See, when I look at people with negative attitudes, my first thought is, I've got an opportunity to help somebody. I don't look at those people saying, oh, they frustrate me, I've got to change something. I look at it opportunistically, and if I do, chances are, so will they. So, we have to change our relationship. This is an investment with a return. When we invest in someone who has a negative attitude, and that person ultimately adopts a positive attitude on an ongoing basis, it becomes contagious. And this is what will improve the reception of our coaching, because other people will see this. So let me share with you a great story. This is a young man from a client site of ours years ago, and his name is Chris. And Chris was going through a difficult time. He was a salesperson. This is not just a sales example. But one of the things I want you to realize is the creative power of coaching. His boss was pretty frustrated with him, and he was very close to being terminated. And I sat down with Chris, and I said, why are your sales low? And he said, well, my boss stinks. Now, this is a young man right out of college. And the first words out of his mouth were, my boss stinks. So instead of fighting him, which was a very immature response, obviously, I said, well, outside of your boss, why are your sales low? His next comment really befuddled me. He said, this company has no idea how to market themselves. This company was up 15-18% every single year. The boss and the company's ability to market were not the issues. So what was he doing? He was deflecting. So I used something called reflective coaching. And I said, Chris, I'm going to go get us a soda. And when I come back, I would really encourage you to have a dose of reality. And I want you to be honest with yourself so you can be honest with me. And I want to be very upfront with you. If you're not honest with me, you may not be employed here. Now, before you feel negative towards me, I had permission to do this. This is not a great way to start a coaching relationship. But we were in the midst of having to do something pretty quickly. So I threw my hat in the ring. I was not coaching this person up to this point. So I went to the cafeteria, got us a couple sodas, came back, and here's the power of time. Time does a wonderful thing. It gets people to think. And I gave him a conditioner. I want you to be honest with yourself. And I came back in the room, handed him the soda, and I said, so honestly, why are your sales low? And his voice started to crack, and he said, I can be pretty negative at times. I said, yeah, I've noticed that. How come? And he looked at me and he said, why do you seem so positive? I said, because I want to help you. This is awesome. I really appreciate your honesty. Had I looked at him and said, you better cut it out because I'm getting pretty upset, do you think he would have wanted to work with me? The answer is no. So about 45 days to about 60 days later, his boss calls me pretty upset. You know, I see some of the things you have Chris doing, and this has nothing to do with sales. And I said, nope, nothing at all. And I said, what are you looking at? He said, well, he's out in the series of cubicles and he's serving everybody pizza. And I said, yeah. Remember the 4-step coaching process, the learning project? Every week he had to perform a random act of kindness for a teammate or somebody in the company. So he brought in pizzas one day and served everybody at their cubicles. As the boss began to raise his voice with me, I said, what are you looking at? He said, well, they're out there laughing and having fun. And he's just sitting there smiling. And he stopped. And he got it. I said, look, I get that you're upset. But we can't demand attitude. We've got to facilitate every single day for him to make a choice of having a positive attitude. And I said, and if we can have people around him be positive and view him differently, because you and I are not the only ones who see him having a negative attitude. And he sat there and he said, wow, I never thought of that. His sales went from 71 to 119% within 12 months. I did no direct sales coaching. The second example, had a manager at one of our client sites who was really struggling with time. Said he did not have the time to coach. And so we taught him something called 30-second coaching. Bring people in for 30 seconds for the positive things. Write a handwritten note praising someone, saying, John, I'm sorry I haven't spent time with you, but you're doing an awesome job. I love the last 3 articles you wrote. And then he started off every staff meeting with one question. Who's a teammate who's done something really awesome lately? And he got them talking about themselves positively. Never once demanded attitude change. This person, who's now a publisher, has become an advocate of using coaching. Fell in love with it. Was our biggest enemy when it came to implementing a coaching system. So remember, attitude coaching is about facilitating experiences. When we ask questions, we build clarity, not just for us, but for them. When we facilitate experiences, like a client we had, Evan New Johnson, years ago in a call center, we did something crazy. We had them do 10 calls in the morning and the afternoon standing up, and when they took coffee breaks or bathroom breaks or lunch breaks, they had to walk like marathon fast walkers and high-five each other. The challenge, the objective was motion creates emotion. Guess what happened? Sales went through the roof. Customer service metrics went through the roof. Guess what customer service training we did? None. And when we perform random acts of kindness, people see visibly their actions and the responses and what it does for them. And if we fuel the mind, if we get our people reading positive material, and one of the best lines of books you can get is the Chicken Soup books by Mark Victor Hansen. Have your team read these books and share every single week or every 2 weeks something from a chapter they learned. We have to fuel people's minds positively. Now, when we do have that negative person, what do? And years ago at one of our client sites, I had people come up, the receptionist hates you. I said, she does have a right to dislike me. It's not against the law. There's no law saying she has to love me. So we would get in staff meetings and I did something. Instead of fighting her because her defenses were really high, I would address her in the meeting and she'd sit up, she'd fold her arms like she's ready to go into a boxing match. And I would praise her. I said, I wanted to share with you, we've gotten a number of compliments from clients on your ability, and I just wanted to share that with you. And I would neutralize her. And then I went to the owner and I said, she's tough. I get she doesn't like me, and that's okay, but she's tough. But I said, I've heard her on the phone. She's really good. And he said, what are you suggesting? I said, what if she went into sales? 15 years later, she is still in sales today. Never once have we had a conversation about our arduous relationship. We now consider each other friends. I never asked her to change. Never asked her to change her attitude. I facilitated the choice. So again, every single day our employees are making choices. Our job is to help them make the positive ones. And the way we do that is to realize there are two sides of change. Most people will choose not to change because it's easier. I love to use the humor. When was the last time someone came into your office and said, "Boss, I need some change. I'm stagnant. I'm bored. Do you have any uncomfortable role plays or simulations to get me out of my comfort zone?" That would be awesome. I really hope you're laughing. So remember, most people do not choose to change because it sounds arduous. It sounds like a lot of work. So, one of the things that we have to realize is that when we have that, and I'm going to say elephant in the room, that person who really exhibits a negative attitude, I want you to adopt this phrase: what you do not prevent, you permit. And one of the best examples is when we're in a staff meeting and we have someone who's disruptive and rolling his or her eyes and looking at their phone and not paying attention. The trust that you have with everybody in that room, assuming it's your team, the whole team, is at tremendous risk based on how you handle that person. So we have to go from fix to invest. And we have to coach people and give them choices, because the rest of the team will see your actions and will respect you, even if the results are not permanent or even positive for that matter. So, when we talk about questions, we have to become skilled at asking really good questions. A self-actualized question is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's a what question plus a success imperative. Let me give you a really fundamental example. What do we do with our kids? We tell them to study. Make sure you study for your test on Thursday. A self-actualized question is, what are you going to do to successfully prepare for that test? And what could I do to assist you? So if somebody has a negative attitude, you could say, "Bob, what are you going to do to successfully engage with your teammate? And what will that look like?" It's a what question plus a success imperative. Now let's say we have an awareness conversation. We're going to sit down with Susie and we're going to build awareness that she does not have a great attitude. A rating question could be, "Susie, on a scale of 1 to 6, 6 being you are positive, you are relentlessly interactive, you smile all the time, and 1, you're viewed as a little bit choppy and arduous and sometimes maybe even tough to deal with." So when you use rating questions, use an even number. They can't easily go in the middle. Number 2, give the bookends some description. Give it some pizzazz. Don't just say fair, good, excellent. It's too interpretive. So when you ask that question, typically they still try to go in the middle, and she might say, "Well, I'm about a 2 or 3, maybe a 3 or 4. And they cover that middle area because it feels safe. Their answer is somewhat inconsequential because the reaction can be, "Well, what do you think we need to do to move in the direction of a 6? Notice we're using the response to move in a forward direction. Now, if you have someone who's really arduous, someone who's not looking in the mirror, third-party questions are awesome. So let me give you an example. John, if your best friend were here right now, and he or she honestly had to describe how you're interacting with your teammates, what do you think they would really say? Notice the word honestly and really. And I'm using this third-party best friend, which serves as a deflection, which allows people to be a little bit more honest so they can participate in the process of improvement. All too often in the corporate world, we only bring people into our office for the negative stuff. Bring people into your office for the positive things. Praise them on a specific job well done. Because guess what? They go back to the cubicles and every employee asks, "What did the boss say?" "Oh, he or she just wanted to praise me. They just really loved the work I did on that project." Sometimes when we're coaching one person, we're actually coaching the whole team. So again, when you're coaching, come into the office, send a note home, put a sticky note on their desk. We have a credit union client who literally, the supervisors will put sticky notes, sign them anonymous. You're doing an awesome job. Keep it up. Guess what that does? Does that change an attitude for life? No. But it gets them in 2, maybe even 3 to 4 hour increments, acting a little bit more positively. See, when we're coaching attitudes, you know what we're doing? We're nudging them up a hill, and the hill is steep, and it's made out of mud. And by the way, it's raining. So traction initially is going to be tough. And we have to sit behind them, stand behind them, walk behind them, and continue to nudge them up that hill. And the hill is called Change Hill. So again, an attitude is a choice. It's a choice we help them make, and ultimately a choice we support and nurture when they make the choice. Remember our 4 stages. We're first going to have an awareness conversation. Then we're looking for effort. And where people produce effort, you want to acknowledge that. John, I really see you're trying to get along with your teammates more. I know it's not easy just yet. I know it's not feeling as comfortable as we'd both like, but that's okay. I wanted to let you know how much I appreciate it. What we're really saying is please keep going. You'll get there. If you have any questions on this course, feel free to reach out to me personally at tim@progresscoachingleader.com or even give our office a call. I hope this has helped.